Alright, we're on our way. We are leaving Pocatello, Idaho on a nice back road called Buckskin Road, and it ends up in Ingham, Idaho. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that right, but Pocatello to Ingham. And in today's video, I want to talk about the 3 things that I love most about my Harley Davidson. First, a little background on myself. I'm 41 years old. I've been riding motorcycles for 13 years, and this is my 11th motorcycle. It's my first Harley Davidson. Not only the first Harley Davidson that I've owned, but the first that I've ever ridden. It's a 2020 Softail Standard 107. So when I started out riding, I started out on a Kawasaki Ninja 500R. I've owned 2 R6s, and between the 2 of those, I have 9 track days under my belt. I've owned an R1, I've owned a Triumph Speed Triple, I've owned a Triumph Daytona 675, I've owned two dual sports, the same family, Yamaha WR250s. One was in Supermoto trim, the WR250X, and the other was in dual sport trim, WR250R. I've also owned a Honda Shadow 750 Phantom, and I currently own a KTM 1290 Super Duke R. So those are my 2 motorcycles that I own right now, is my KTM Super Duke R and this Harley Davidson Softail Standard. So my background clearly is in sport bikes, high performance motorcycles. So this is quite a change for me. And I've had this bike for almost a month. I bought it on October 3rd. It is now November 1st. And I have, I don't know, just under 1,500 miles, 1,411 miles. And so in those just under 1,500 miles, I've grown to love some things about it. And that's what I'm going to talk about today. The 3 things that I love most about my Harley Davidson. Number 3, it makes me feel kind of badass. Yeah, it's not a very tangible concept. It's not something you can look at on a spec sheet, you know. But there's something about it that makes it feel badass. I think part of it is the sound. Harleys have a rumble, but mine still has stock pipes, so it's not so much the sound for me, but still it sounds good when I get on it. It's got like a muscle car vibe to it. It's got a powerful sound. It's an authoritative sound. I think that's part of it. Another part is the power. This isn't the most powerful motorcycle I've ever ridden. I've ridden a Hayabusa before. I've got a Super Duke, which is a ridiculously powerful motorcycle. I've ridden a number of leader bikes, but this one is still powerful, and obviously it delivers its power a lot differently than sport bikes. Everything's low and it's immediate, comes on as soon as you're rolling. As soon as the clutch is fully engaged, you're in the power band. So it's got this like very muscular power delivery. It's not so much like high endurance strength. It's like power strength, like Bill Goldberg, the wrestler. I don't know if anybody knows who that is anymore, but it's just like a lot of power. But so those 2 things. But I think the thing that makes me feel the coolest the most is this is going to sound weird because it's not sound, it's not power. I think it's the seating position. Now, hear me out. On all my other motorcycles, I've sat, you know, kind of hunched over a little bit, or at least upright at the most, with my legs tucked under me and my arms tucked in. I'm balled up in like a cocoon type position a lot of times. Got a lot of bend in my elbows, a lot of bend in my knees. It's kind of like sitting on a bar stool. You got a small platform to sit on, your legs are tucked underneath you and your arms are to your side. Whereas sitting on this, it's kind of like sitting in a high back leather office chair that a CEO would sit in. It puts you in this position where your legs are forward, you're man spreading, your arms are up, they're out, to the side, they're forward, and you're in this posture where you're just taking up as much space as you can take up. And it's when you take up space with your body, it's a position, it's like a posture of confidence, right? You can't take up a lot of space sitting on a bar stool, but if you're on a sofa, you can kind of spread out and have this confident position. You know, sitting on this motorcycle, I feel like I'm sitting the way that Don Draper sits on a sofa. He owns the room with his posture, and with my posture, I own the road. And so I think that is the key to like feeling badass on a Harley Davidson, is this seating position. It just puts you in this posture of confidence and power, like a king's throne. So that's it. That's number 3. Number 3, the third reason I love my Harley Davidson is I feel badass when I ride it. It's a weird thing to say and to think about, but it's true. Number 2, or the second thing that I love most about my Harley Davidson, is it's fun to ride at any speed. It's my 11th bike, and all 10 bikes that I've owned before this have had sort of a sweet spot for speed. Like on sport bikes, you can go like 60 miles an hour in first gear. And riding around in first gear is no fun, so you're going to ride around in second gear and higher. So if you're in second gear on a sport bike, if you want to get to the power band, which is usually about 7,000, 8,000 RPMs, you're going to be doing highway speeds or more. And on something like my R1, second gear at 8,000 RPMs, I mean, you're talking 80 miles an hour. You don't have to ride around at those speeds, but it's always fun to be in the power band. And whenever you're in the power band, in second gear or higher on a sport bike, you're already hauling ass. Now, I've owned like a Speed Triple, and I currently own a KTM Super Duke, and those are a little more friendly at lower speeds, but still, they're fun. They're more fun than a sport bike to ride at lower speeds, but still, they've got a distinct power band that's up high in the RPMs. Like my KTM, it's got to be like 6,500. Once you're at like 6,500, that's when everything kind of kicks in and goes into overdrive. But in second gear at 6,500 RPMs, you're basically at highway speeds. My dual sports and my Honda Shadow, those were fun to ride at low speeds. They were great. Tooling around town from stoplight to stoplight, lots of fun. First and second gear, no problem. But the problem with those, of course, is once you get on the highway, you get on the highway with a dual sport, oh my god, that's just a nightmare. It's okay for about 5 minutes, and then after that, you're like, get me the hell off this highway. And the Honda Shadow, it had potential to be fine on the highway, but the problem is that 750cc engines with 5 speeds is just not enough. So going 65 miles per hour, that engine was really wound out, is buzzing, and then just like the dual sports, the Honda Shadow, you had like basically no passing power at 65 miles an hour. I mean, you could pass cars, but it wasn't much, you know, it was about the same as passing in a Honda Civic or a Toyota Corolla. There's just not a lot there. Now, let's talk about the Harley now. Okay, so the Harley, it's so bizarre to me with the background that I have this 1750cc motor, or 107 cubic inches, and it revs out to 5,500 RPMs. And most of the time I don't even rev it up that high. I rev it to like 3,500 or 4,000 before I shift. So driving around in first and second gear is totally fine. You can be in second gear and in the power band and be going 25 miles an hour. Basically, once this thing starts rolling, you got the clutches engaged and you're rolling at 15-25 miles per hour, you can shift into second and you will have all the power that you need. 20 miles per hour, 20-25 miles per hour, second gear, twist throttle, whoa, whiplash. Like, that would never happen on a sport bike or my KTM, right? Going second gear, 25 miles per hour, that's lugging the motor. I would twist the throttle on the KTM and be like, blah, 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 you know, it'd be lugging. This thing, it's the power band is so low in the RPM range, it's crazy. So, tooling around town, stoplight to stoplight, it's totally fine. Going slow is fine. Now, getting this sucker out on the highway, this thing cruises at 80 miles per hour at just over 3,000 RPMs. That is, in my brain, that is so insane, because no bike that I've ever ridden has been at that RPM range at 80 miles per hour. My KTM, which has got a big motor for a metric, it's probably at like 5,000, 5,500, maybe 6,000 RPMs at 80 miles per hour in 6th gear. And this thing's at 3,000. And the crazy thing is, so it's totally comfortable and totally fine on the highway. Ooh, there's some gravel. Now the speed limit here in Idaho on the interstate is 80, so I don't want anybody to think that I'm riding around like a madman on the freeway. No, it's just over 3,000 RPMs in 6th gear at 80 miles per hour. Now, it's not exactly comfortable to ride 80 miles per hour because there's not much wind protection. And this isn't a big touring bike with a big front fairing. So you still have to deal with the wind. But as far as everything else goes, the engine is totally understressed, completely relaxed at highway speeds. And you've got all the passing power in the world. You come up on a slow car, you can be in 6th gear. There's no need to downshift. This thing has got so much torque, you just roll the throttle and off you go. Sometimes it's nice just to go on a country back road and go the speed limit and just look around at everything. You know, out where I am right now, it's beautiful. And riding my KTM out here is, I don't really get much opportunity to look around and take in the views because I'm focused on the road. I'm watching, you know, I'm looking for my lines, I'm looking for not necessarily my brake markers, but like where I'm going to roll off the throttle and where I'm going to turn in on the corners, and I'm just kind of focused. I got tunnel vision on the road, whereas on the Harley I could just cruise like this, take a look around. It's gorgeous out here. And that's one thing that I haven't been able to get with the sport bikes. The second thing that I love most about my Harley Davidson is that it's fun to ride at any speed. And last but not least, this should come as no surprise to anybody who's ridden a Harley, or owns a Harley, or likes Harleys, is my favorite thing about my Harley Davidson is the engine. And this engine has so much character. It's really unbelievable. I've ridden inline 4s, inline 3s, parallel twins. I've ridden V-twins and single cylinders, and they all have their own like distinct characteristics. You know, inline 4s are like buttery smooth. They almost feel like they have no moving parts. They almost feel like an electric motor. Parallel twins and inline 3s are very similar in that they feel like they don't really have any moving parts, but they've got a better sound. A parallel twin, especially one that has the crank pins offset 270 degrees, sound really nice. And the triples have a very unique sound that I really like. But out of all the engine configurations that I've ridden, I've always liked the V-twin the most, and that's why I have a KTM Super Duke. Is because I went from a triple to the V-twin, and I was like, oh, I'm in love. V-twin is where it's at. Now, the KTM for a high-performance motorcycle has a ton of character, but nothing compares to the character of the Harley engine. Now, there's a lot of things about the Harley engine that give it its character, and so one of those things is that the connecting rods are connected to the same crank pin, and so what that does is it creates a lot of vibration, and it creates a ton of torque, inertial torque, as the crankshaft is spinning, but it also creates a lot of vibration. And to increase that vibration even more is that this is an undersquare motor, which means it has a small bore and a long stroke. So those pistons are traveling really far up and down in each cycle of the engine, whereas in a sport bike, you know, the pistons are going like this. They're traveling very little distance. But this one has got these big long piston throws, and so they have to put a counterbalance shaft in here, but they don't eliminate all the vibration. They eliminate like 75% of it, so that you still get the feel through the bars, you still get the feel through the pegs, and you get this feel. And the character of this motor, you know, character is hard to define, but this motor, this engine, feels like a living thing. It's very mechanical, and it feels like you can feel all the ticks and the clicks, and it feels like you can feel all the moving parts. It feels like it's got all these moving parts, and you can feel them all. They all communicate through the chassis, into the handlebars, into your hands and your feet, and normally you would think that's like really annoying, but it makes it feel like you're riding something that's alive. It's very visceral, it's very mechanical, and so these concepts are difficult to articulate. But yeah, so that's it. Those are the three things that I love most about my Harley Davidson, and they're all very sort of abstract concepts. And I feel badass. It's fun at any speed, and the engine and its character. It's got, I mean, I like the power too, but that aside, it speaks to you. So that's it. Those are my favorite things about my Harley Davidson. And if you ride a Harley Davidson and you agree with these, or you have some different opinions, let me know down in the comments, and I'll definitely reply. Let me know what you think. And thank you for watching.